explaining the fall of man. Really, in a nutshell, here's the situation that took place. As you know, God created everything. He created the heavens and the earth, the greater light, lesser light, in other words, the sun and the moon and the stars and firmament and water and birds and trees and animals and fish and all of that. And then he creates a garden in the midst of all of that. And the garden is where he places mankind, Adam and Eve. And he tells man, he says, your responsibility is to oversee everything that is created. He says you got control over the fish, you got control over the birds, you got control over the animals, everything that creeps and crawls. But he never gave man control over each other. That's something we're going to have to talk about later. But think about that. He never gave man control over each other. So he says, as far as food goes, everything you see, all the leaves and trees and fruit and vegetables and all of that kind of good stuff, he says, is all yours. You're good. But there is one thing that I do want you to do. One command that God gives. He says, in the midst of the garden, there's a tree. It's called the knowledge of good and evil. He says that fruit, he says, I don't want you to mess with that fruit. Now, it wasn't an apple, okay? It was not an apple. It was the knowledge of good and evil. That's what was on that particular tree. He says right in the middle of the garden, he says, don't mess with that. He says, in the day that you mess with that, if you ever mess with it, he says, you will surely die. Now, what did he mean by die? Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. So they are having a good time, Adam and Eve. They're enjoying life. They are living. They are doing what they do. They're overseeing everything. And then the serpent, or in other words, the devil, comes along, and the devil gets to Eve and says, hey, why aren't you messing with that particular tree? Why aren't you messing with that fruit? And Eve says, well, the Lord said that we don't need to mess with the knowledge of good and evil, because if we do, we'll die. And the serpent says, is that really what he said? See, the devil ain't got no new tricks. He's doing the same thing that he's always done way back since the garden. He says, did he really say that? The only thing that he wanted to do was create a tiny little speck of doubt in her mind about what God said. That's often all it takes. He said, is that what God said? He didn't say that God didn't say that. He said, is that what he said? You hear what I'm saying? You hear the difference? He says, you're not going to die. Now, that was a straight up lie. He said, you're not going to die. He says, the thing is, God knows that if you get a hold of the knowledge of good and evil, then you'll be like God too. And Adam and Eve says, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. Well, let's check it out. You know, why not get some more knowledge? The problem with knowledge is that knowledge creates a vast amount of information. You get information, but you don't get understanding. So now they've got all of this information available to them. They partake of the knowledge of good and evil. And the Bible says in chapter 3, Genesis chapter 3, it says their eyes are open. Boom. Now they've got access to all kinds of information. It's like putting a child in front of the internet with no parental measures, no protection, no blocks, nothing. You are open to every single thing that could be imaginable to view or to hear. Could you imagine what that would do to a child? Could you imagine what that is doing to children nowadays? Too much information, too soon, not able to handle what they're seeing. That's what the knowledge of good and evil is. You have access to now tons of information, but you have no wisdom to understand how to handle it. You have no wisdom to know how to rein in your senses, how to control your impulses. Now you've got thoughts looming around in your head because of things you saw that you never should have seen, things you've heard that you never should have heard. You've got ideas coming now. It's forming desires, it's forming passions, it's forming lusts, it's forming vices, it's forming desires you can't control, which turn into addictions. All of these types of things, bad habits, all of this is happening now because you have tapped into the knowledge of good and evil.